that happened on the 9th of December. Now, according to top army sources, Indian and Chinese troops had a brief clash. This was at the line of actual control in Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh. The army says the face-off led to minor injuries to a few personnel from both sides, and both sides immediately the area commanders met. There was a flag meeting and disengagement happened within the next few hours after this clash was reported. Sources also telling PTI, the news agency, at least 6 Indian soldiers were injured. They were brought to the field hospital in Guwahati for treatment. Sources also telling ANI, another news agency, that Indian troops gave a befitting response to the Chinese aggression. The number of Chinese soldiers injured is more than that of Indian soldiers. The Chinese had come heavily prepared with around 300 soldiers, but they did not expect the Indian side also to be well prepared. We're given to understand that the attempt by the Chinese was to try and gain height dominance, area domination as it were, before the winter sets in, before the snow sets in fully. And of course, as you well know, in the upper reaches there in Tawang, it becomes very difficult. Mobility becomes very difficult once the snow sets in. So the attempt was to try and capture height and get height and area domination, but that was thwarted by the Indian side. Let me go across to my colleagues. Akash is joining us live. Abhishek Jha will also be joining us live. Akash, first things first, do we have a sense of what led to this provocation? Was it left to the local commanders there to try and sort out this issue? Was it hand-to-hand combat? Was there any weapon of any nature used? And what are the nature of the injuries sustained by soldiers?
So, Zaka, first of all, we have got no clarity as to what was the reason behind it, but definitely our different sources are telling us that, they were large in number and, they were not, they were not ready with the kind of reply they got. Also, talking about the numbers, so 6 is the figure from Indian side. We are learning that at least 6 of our soldiers are injured. But, talking about this particular point, Zaka, so it's this particular area is not an all-weather approach area, and that was the reason why they were looking for the dominance. This is what we have learned. And also, while talking about this particular sector, the eastern sector, so this is the second most sensitive sector. And talking about the point, so we have seen in the past that how China has changed its stance about the claims in this particular area. We have got more than 25 friction points alongside the actual line of control. But talking about this particular incident, this has reported, from 9th of December when this has happened, and it is happening after 2 years, because we have seen Galwan, how our brave heart soldiers laid their lives. And after Galwan, this is one incident where this was a clash that was reported from this particular area of Arunachal Pradesh. Also, Zaka, in 2021, we are learning that similar kind of face-off happened, but this was a minor one. But this time, it was a clash where, both the sides have suffered injuries, and 6 of our Jawans are injured as of now, and they have been shifted to the Guwahati hospital. Also, Zaka, this is important to mention that they were large in number. Even then, they have got, more injuries. In fact, we are learning that the number there on their side is more than 10. More than 10 of their soldiers are injured as of now, but this is again not confirmed, and we are looking for some more clarity on this as well.
All right, so 6 Indian soldiers receiving treatment at the field hospital in Guwahati, more than 10 injured on the Chinese side. Abhishek is also joining us. Abhishek, the fact that the previous standoff in eastern Ladakh has not been fully resolved in Demchok and Depsang, certainly the disengagement has not happened. On top of that, now you have this incident in Tawang. How is Government of India seeing this? Are they seeing this as a localized incident, or is this further provocation?
So, Zaka, if you could just look at this whole incident in a broader perspective. So, this kind of failure has been given by China in the last several months, because we have seen multiple reports of China improving their infrastructural capability along LSE in Arunachal Pradesh. There have been also reports of Chinese village construction where new people are brought in there to become part of that newly constructed villages on the Chinese side. Then there have been reports of many persons frequently missing from Arunachal Pradesh and the area near LSE, and then being returned by Chinese side after a few days of being detained by the Chinese authorities. So the kind of dominance, the kind of strength that China was trying to build along LSE in Arunachal Pradesh was very much clear in the last several months. And probably this is why when now we are reporting that about 300 Chinese military persons or soldiers tried to ingress. They were pushed back. So this tells us that in Indian side, there was this psyche always that Chinese could do some misadventure anytime. So the preparedness was there. And this is why only that all those attempt to dominate that area was in vain from the Chinese side. And the same thing has happened in Ladakh also 2.5 years ago, when Chinese side tried to dominate the area and tried to push Indians beyond the
Okay.
line of actual control. They were the reply they got from the Chinese side was, from the Indian side, was very fierce and very resolute, and that whole contested area remained like line of actual control. However, we have seen a lot of disengagement happening in the past, but not fully disengaged. The both side has not fully disengaged.
Okay.
But the one thing that we'll have to see from here on was, will Arunachal Pradesh Tawang become new Ladakh, where the deployment of arms, ammunition, and troops from both the sides have been at an unprecedented level? Will Tawang also become new Ladakh, or will the flag meeting that has happened between the commanders of both the sides will ease the situation for future?
All right, we'll see how the story plays out. For the moment, I want to thank both Akash and Abhishek for joining us. Now, remember, the incident happened on the 9th of December, the details of which are now being made available today on the 12th of December. So it's been 3 days since this incident happened. And Parliament, remember, is in session. So politics has already started over this Tawang clash. Now the Congress party has hit out at the center, saying that the Modi government seems to be mum and doing nothing. It is running away from its responsibilities, even as the opposition seeks answers. In fact, the Congress is likely to also move an adjournment motion to discuss this latest India-China clash that happened at Tawang tomorrow in Parliament. Let me go across. First, let me play out the bite of Randeep Surjewala, Congress leader, and then I'll go across to my colleague Pallavi Ghosh.
देश की राष्ट्रीय सुरक्षा से खिलवाड़ हो रहा है और मोदी सरकार चुप बैठी है, अपनी जिम्मेवारी से पीछे हट रही है. Now they are occupying area or attempting to occupy area in Tawang here, Arunachal Pradesh. When will Prime Minister show red eyes to China? Well, will Prime Minister give a befitting reply to China? They can't brazenly occupy our territory. And for Prime Minister to say nobody has come, nobody has entered our territory, only emboldens China to further occupy our territory. We demand, both inside and outside the Parliament, Prime Minister should come to Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha and reply to the country and to the opposition about the exact position of brazen and illegal occupation of India's territory at different points by the Chinese PLA.
Across to Pallavi, my colleague. So the Congress saying that they're going to move an adjournment motion. We heard from Owaisi as well sometime back saying he's also going to move a motion asking for discussion on this issue. What are the chances, though, that the government will do that? Will there be any kind of a statement that will be made by the Defense Minister or the External Affairs Minister?
Likely. Obviously, tomorrow I can think we can anticipate some kind of a disruption taking place. Also, highly unlikely, Zaka, that the adjournment notice is going to be admitted. Most probably, there could be a statement coming in from the government, because that's usually the procedure whenever the Parliament is in session. And mind you, when it comes to China and India relations, this kind of a scuffle, this has also been one of the favorite points which Rahul Gandhi himself has been taking up, hitting out often at this government for being weak as far as our foreign policy is concerned, not speaking the truth as far as China is concerned. So I'm sure at one point of time even he's going to be responding or tweeting out on this. But tomorrow in Parliament, certainly the Congress, along with many other political parties in the opposition spectrum, are likely to push for an adjournment notice demanding a discussion on this.
All right, Pallavi, we'll see the political fireworks on this tomorrow if it happens in Parliament. Like Pallavi was saying, it's unlikely that the adjournment motion will get accepted by the chair and there will be any form of discussion. But don't rule out the possibility of a statement by either the Defense Minister or a member of the government, the cabinet. Let's see how that story plays out. Meanwhile, let's open this up to our guests who are joining us. So what is China trying to do here? Is this a localized sort of clash that happened? Perhaps some of the area commanders there being hyper on the Chinese side, trying to get area domination and height domination? Or is there a larger pattern at play? Remember, the standoff in eastern Ladakh has not been fully resolved, so is China trying to send out a signal by what it did in Tawang? Major General retired V.K. Datta is former ADG Territorial Army, will be joined by Lieutenant General retired Shankar Prasad, former DG of Infantry. Lieutenant Colonel retired Anil Dahoon is a defense analyst and will be joined by Aina Tangent, political commentator from Beijing. Major General Datta, let me start with you first. We have seen clashes in Tawang in the eastern sector in the past as well. They range from minor clashes, including the one that we saw in October of 2021, to, of course, really major incidents like what we saw in Samudrongchu in 1986. The point being that how do we see this latest incident? Is it a localized clash that was quickly contained by both sides? Or is China, given that the situation in eastern Ladakh is still ongoing, China is trying to send a signal by opening a new front in Tawang? You have to unmute yourself, Major General. You have to unmute your computer.
Okay, now can you hear me, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
See, after the Galwan incident, the way the Chinese came in and we did a counter mobilization, which actually took the Chinese by surprise. They thought that while the COVID is going on, maybe the Indian army will not be able to mobilize in the manner we did. So that actually surprised them. And since then, the Indian army has upscaled our entire deployment along the entire frontage of the LAC, be it the Ladakh sector, the middle sector, or the eastern sector. And therefore, what has happened now in Arunachal, we have been anticipating this and we were ready for it. And we have been ready. We have been keeping the Chinese under surveillance. And the moment of the movement of the Chinese army was detected by our forward troops, we immediately mobilized our troops to go and have a face-to-face with them and stop them physically on the place where they were trying to intrude.
Okay.
And if you recollect what they did in Galwan with the spiked batons and whatever, this time the entire frontage, as far as the Indian army is concerned, is fully prepared for the Chinese in any kind of face-off, whether it's a push and a shove, whether it comes on to clubbing each other. So we are fully ready.
Let me ask Colonel Dahoon. The issue, sir, is that after Galwan, Lieutenant Colonel, after Galwan, clearly, as General Datta was saying, both sides are very, very clearly in a state of heightened alert, no doubt about it. One good thing, perhaps, silver lining in this Tawang incident is that all the injuries so far seem to be minor. It seems like it was hand-to-hand combat and no weapons of any lethal nature were used. But having said that, it also highlights the propensity of any clash flaring up, whether it is a localized clash or if there is a larger design. How would you read what happened in Tawang 3 days ago?
See, the thing is that what happened in Tawang was again a feeler by the Chinese trying to see how well are we poised in that sector. They sent in a feeler, we countered it. And therefore, we know that we are fully prepared for it. But you are absolutely right. Any situation, a flare-up, a push and a shove, while we all carry weapons, the weapons are carried with their barrels down and the strong arm behind the back. But in any critical situation, any one individual, any one soldier getting excited on his own can lead to a situation where there may be a face-off and it can lead to an escalation. Therefore, the Chinese must realize that while we have a convention of no firearms to be used, but we should not also wish away a mishap. Mishap can happen.
Okay, let me ask General Shankar Prasad. You know, one of the problems in the Eastern Ladakh situation was there were agreements. There were agreements that China had signed upon, 1993 agreement, the 2006 agreement, but both of those agreements were overlooked by the Chinese, and that's how incidents like Galwan happened. By doing what it has done in Tawang, is China also trying to weaponize that entire eastern front now in a way that today we have 50,000 troops on either side of the LAC in eastern Ladakh? Are we looking at a situation where we'll have to have that kind of number of troops in Tawang as well on what could be a hot situation across the LAC there?
Zaka, the problem is very simple and straightforward, which Indian government and the Indian military fully understands. First of all, the problem is starting by the saying that the borders are delineated, are not properly delineated. There's an issue about perception of the borderline. We have a certain perception. They call themselves a different perception. Why is this perception not meeting? The simple reason is because they work on their maps, which the scales are different. We work on our maps, which the scales are different. Therefore, we have tried our best over the last 20, 25 years to come to a common scale of maps. But China doesn't want to resolve this issue of the border delineation. China wants to continue. What I would like to say today to everyone listening to the show, that only single point agenda with China today is to delineate the border and decide once and for all. Otherwise, all these agreements of 93, 92, and 96 are going to be irrelevant. The simple fact is that China is not interested in resolving this border issue. They want to keep it stronger and more alive. They think that some point in time the Indian army can be overcome, the Indian political establishment can be overcome, and they will get their way through. But they're failing to understand. It is not 1962 any longer. Mm-hmm. They've seen what happened at Doklam. They've seen what is happening in Galwan, what is happening in Eastern Ladakh, what happened at various places like Kailash Range, like the Pengongso Lake, like the DPN. So they think that they can continue to do salami slicing and keep sitting in areas like they've done in the DBO and the Depsang Plains. They think that if we come and occupy a certain area and we claim that to be ours, which is actually not going to ever happen again. So Indian army can do, you see, we must understand that Chinese army is a much, much larger army than us. Indeed it is. But at the point of contact, at the point of military contact, at the tactical strategic military contact, we are able to muster the equal military power as they can. If they can bring X number of artillery guns, so can we. If they bring X number of infantry, so can we. So this wrong perception that the Chinese are carrying post 62 that they can make a bigger army as something that we can be cowed down by. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen any longer.
Okay, let me get a view from Beijing as well. Einar Tangent is joining us. Einar, the problem is whether it was what happened in 2020 and that continuing situation there, or right now what is happening in Tawang. And we don't know if this was a localized incident or this could potentially flare up into something bigger. The feeling here in New Delhi is China is unilaterally trying to change the status quo. I'm not going into the reasons for it, but you cannot have a situation where you have boundaries that have not been demarcated, lines that have not been defined, one side unilaterally changing the status quo. That's what China, I'm afraid, seems to have done in Ladakh, in the western sector, and it could potentially be what China is attempting to do now in Tawang, in the eastern sector.
Well, it's interesting you bring that point up about unilateral determining borders, because that's what one of your most prominent historians, Nehru, said that is what he tried to do way back then, and which is the source of the conflict today. But in terms of Beijing, this has not even hit the airwaves. There's nothing on it. I can only find one report by an Indian news source saying that there was, in fact, a clash 3 days ago. From Beijing's perspective, they're not looking for any more conflict right now. The nation is emerging from COVID. There are tremendous amounts of internal focus on that. There's no room or desire to focus on a minor skirmish in an area where both sides admit that the line of demarcation is unknown.
But Mr. Tangent, precisely because of that, and there is a view here in India that precisely because of all this, protests that we've seen, fairly unprecedented protests against zero COVID in China, China needs a distraction. The central government there needs a distraction to take away attention from all the bad press it's been getting. And what better diversion than a clash with a neighbor?
Yes, if that were true, then it would be in all of the newspapers and news outlets, since the government does, in fact, have a tremendous say in what is put out there. So since the fact that it has not, in fact, been mentioned at all, should give you your answer just according to your question.
Okay. Before I go to Colonel Dahoon, I'm getting more breaking news. This is, again, the political aspect to this Tawang clash. Now government sources saying, remember, Parliament is in session, so questions will be asked of the government by opposition MPs. Government sources on the opposition plan of raising adjournment motion tomorrow in Parliament on Tawang. Government sources saying they've never dithered away from any discussion or question on China. The government is prepared with all the facts of this incident. A call will be taken tomorrow on whether or not the Raksha Mantri or any other senior minister should make a statement on the floor of the House before the fate of this adjournment motion is decided. Arunima has more details. So the fact that, I think this is what Surjewala, Mr. Owaisi, etc. have been pointing to, that this incident happened 3 days ago. Parliament has been in session. How come the government has not informed Parliament yet?
Yes, and one of the criticisms of the Narendra Modi government from the opposition side has been that you haven't been tough enough on China. You don't even take the name of China when it comes to talking about national security issues. And they've made it very clear, Asaduddin Owaisi, Manish Tiwari, they're all making it very clear that on the floor of Lok Sabha, they are going to ask for details on what has happened in Tawang, the details of that. So when I asked senior government functionaries about what the plan is, whether the Raksha Mantri will take the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha into confidence, what I was told was that, as far as facts of the matter are concerned, of course, the government is prepared, but the political call on whether that statement should be made, the suo moto, or a little more time should be taken, and then a statement should be made, that call hasn't been taken yet. Maybe tomorrow morning or later in the day, we will have more clarity on whether Raksha Mantri briefs the lower and the upper house.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Let me go back to our guest, Lieutenant Colonel Dahoon. It's not just for tactical or military reasons why the Chinese keep going on and on about Tawang. It is also important from being a spiritual center for Tibetan Buddhism. I believe the Tawang monastery is one of the holiest shrines in Tibetan Buddhism, and therefore the Chinese have been calling Tawang as part of southern Tibet. Politically, do you see this issue coming back on the front burner, as it were, now that this clash has happened, or do you see this as part of routine skirmishes that keep happening in this area?
Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity. Good evening to you and good evening to all the panelists. I don't want to get into the religious aspect of it because being a veteran and having served in infantry for so long, I will not get into the religious part. A skirmish is a skirmish at the border. Soldiers getting injured, soldiers getting killed, and then we do a knee-jerk kind of reactions. Now, allow me to go back a bit. On 19th June 2020, we gave a clean check to China. ना कोई घुसा है, ना कोई घुसा हुआ है, और ना ही किसी ने हमारी पोस्ट ली हुई है. The trade increased with effect from 2020. Today is by more than 65%, if my figures are right. Now we keep coming up with funny kind of statements that this is not LAC, this is not LOC. These are perception lines. What are we talking? We are soldiers. If starting from 1947, if our perception is not clear that what is the LAC or what is the LOC, then we should have packed our bags and we should have gone home. We should not have been there in uniform for whatever number of years we have served. There is no perception line. It is well defined by the geographical features, the alignment of LOC or LAC on ground. Let's not get into that these are perception lines. These are not. I'm sorry, these are not.
So why do you think these skirmishes then keep happening from time to time? The Chinese patrol into what we perceive as our territory, and we patrol into what the Chinese perceive as their territory.
Yes.
Why do these skirmishes keep happening then?
I'm coming. Now, because I don't know what has gone wrong and whom to blame for it. Is our foreign policy and diplomacy in place today? Is there any clarity on what has happened in Galwan after 16, 17 rounds of disengagement? Why the government is not saying that Chinese troops are still inside, 12 kilometers inside? Now, when we try to cover up at our end diplomatically, now the perception which goes to the foreign land is that they are trying to save their skin. They are doing a face-saving act. And the latest is this incident happened 3 days back. Why everything was quiet till the time it came in social media? Either the government should say that they were not aware. As a veteran, I'll accept, fine. They were not aware. But if they were aware and Parliament is in session, can anybody justify why they did not take the Parliament into confidence or the country in confidence?
Okay.
Listen, sir, I will request you. When we talk about these skirmishes, it is not hand-to-hand fight or throwing stones at each other. It is an action where our sovereignty of our country is getting compromised on daily basis. Let's not hide behind a national security thing and say that we cannot disclose it. You better disclose it, because the sovereignty of the country is under question mark.
Okay, let me go back to Major General Datta, because what people are trying to get a sense of is, we have had this situation in Eastern Ladakh. There it's clear that China was unilaterally trying to change the status quo. Now you could argue, the Chinese say that India was building infrastructure, therefore something needed to be done to stop that. Now I'm not getting into the details of it or the reasons for it. Fact is that one side unilaterally tried to change the status quo. Here in Tawang, given all the past history, and of course there was 62 as well, and Tawang was a major theatre in 62, do you see this as a localized skirmish by the area commanders there trying to get height domination before the winter sets in, before the snow fully sets in, because after that you're pretty much immobile for the next 3 months there in those icy heights? Or do you see this as part of a pattern to try and commit a certain number of brigades here, a certain number of battalions here, in a way that the troops there are kept occupied, the troops there are kept bogged down?
You are absolutely right. After Galwan, there have been minor issues in the eastern sector. That is basically the McMahon line sector, which we talked
about, where the Chinese do not actually agree to that McMahon line. And whatever we have tried to negotiate with the Chinese over the years, exchange of maps, the lines, their maps don't tally with ours, and there will be no final delineation of the border. So Jal Shankar Prasad had very well covered it. We've had number of talks. Their perception doesn't tally with our perception, and Chinese intentionally are not going ahead in resolving this issue of final delineation and making a final permanent international border. Now, as far as the Tawang sector is concerned, it was covered by the other panelists, and you also covered it, that the Chinese claim it as part of the southern, southern Tibet, because of the Tawang monastery and the interrelation of the Dalai Lama and the various places of their religious circuit. So Tawang was a major area of battle in 62. The Bumla Pass coming down to Tawang, then to Sela, then to Bomdila. And we had very bloody clashes in this sector. But you should also remember that after the 1962 clashes, the Chinese withdrew back where they withdrew now. We didn't push them out. So where they are today, they went back in 1962. And thereafter, our Indian army went up, and we have occupied the areas which we perceived as ours, and rightly so, is continuing till today. After the Galwan incident, the entire Indian army, the entire sector, whether it is the Eastern Ladakh, the middle, that is the sector of the Uttarakhand, Himachal, and the eastern sector has been boosted up by the Indian army. We are now man to man, force to force. In every area, we are equal to the Chinese. It is not that the Chinese army is larger than us. What General Shankar Prasad said, that how many troops they have deployed, how many troops we have deployed to face them. No, how many weapons we have, how many weapons we have. So tactically and strategically, while the Chinese army may be larger, but we are strong.
Okay, I want to go back to General Prasad, and I want to focus for a moment about this, not just for military factors, but for non-military factors. We know that the Tawang monastery is very important for Tibetan Buddhists. We know that the Dalai Lama is of an advanced stage, and whoever his successor may be, there's also the possibility that Lama could hail from Tawang. The question that's being asked is that the reason why the Chinese have an eye on Tawang, and they keep saying that it's part of southern Tibet? In fact, every time a senior Indian government functionary visits Tawang, the foreign ministry in Beijing makes it a point to make a statement about it. So is that also a factor at play here, the geopolitics of the selection of the next Dalai Lama and the Chinese wanting to have a say in it, if you will?
Absolutely correct. You hit the nail on the head. I completely endorse your understanding of the situation. Tawang is not only just a tactical feature from the military point of view, it's a strategic objective. The strategic objective encompasses all aspects that you've just covered. It is similar to DBO. Why do they want DBO in Eastern Ladakh? Because they want to connect it to Pakistan through the Siachen Glacier. Similarly, here, they want to occupy a strategically, a tactically, and a politically important objective of Tawang. The Tawang, as Datta said, is the next objective will be Sela and then to Bomdila and then to the plains. The objective of China is very clear that if we threaten them here, we will be able to occupy an area which we should be able to influence the Tibetan population. You are absolutely correct. I cannot find any loophole in what you've just said. But the important point is this, that for the last 25, 30 years, we have been talking about in all forums, including international forums, that can we not finally decide on some kind of a perception line being converted into an actual international border? The Chinese don't want to do it. The Chinese have got their own reason to keep this thing boiling. And they don't understand that the Chinese army cannot any longer do what they did to us in the 62 operation. They cannot do what they did to us in the political establishment and the diplomatic status that India has got today. They are completely lost in the wisdom that our Chinese military is capable and stronger than the Indian army. Therefore, we'll be able to have our way. It is not going to happen. I think
I'll give you the final
External Affairs
word.
Minister is very right in saying that we need to be talking to China to resolve this matter at a macro level.
You know, talking about these talks,
cannot be
the boundary talks have been stalled, I think, after the 20th round. The special representatives were constituted when Hu Jintao was president of China and Mr. Vajpayee was Prime Minister of India. They've had 20 rounds of talks and it has not made much progress. And the feeling here in India is that's because China wants to keep this power differential going. The longer this boundary is kept contested and there are these skirmishes every once in a while, the Chinese feel that they can keep India in check. Therefore, they have no interest in these SR level talks.
No, that's not at all the case from Beijing's point of view. They would very much like India to join in to a new Asian century. The border dispute goes back to the time of Nehru. We could argue the history of it. Obviously, there are those within India who feel that it was Nehru who made a mistake by creating unilateral lines and adopting maps that were drawn by British. Who had not even surveyed the area. But at this juncture, the issue is, do you want to solve it militarily or do you want to solve it diplomatically? If you want to solve it diplomatically, you certainly have the wrong guests on. Generals generally favor warfare over talk. So at this juncture, hopefully wiser heads prevail. What is a small incident will simply remain that, rather than being fodder for more jingoistic talk about war.
No, but Einar, look, at the end of the day, this dispute has to be resolved over the diplomatic table, and generals will be the first people to admit to that. The issue is not that. The issue is, why have we had 20 rounds of talks and still seemingly no progress? There was an agreement in 2005, which was called the Guiding Principles, which is basically that none of the settled populations will be disturbed. The existing populations will stay where they stay. And we haven't seen China move an inch on those guiding principles, primarily because of Tawang, because they don't want the settled populations in Tawang to be recognized de facto or de jure as Indian territory.
Well, they've never been recognized as part of Indian territory. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why it's called a border dispute. So, at this juncture, both sides have different interpretations. It's going to have to be settled by diplomatic means. From Beijing's point of view, it's India who's recalcitrant, who does not want to admit that there was a historical mistake, a defeat in 62. And, is for the public perception, they don't want, India does not want to be seen backing down. And I've heard that tonight, that there's no backing down, that we can meet the Chinese forces man for man, that we're stronger, all this kind of jingoistic nonsense.
I think the issue is,
I've heard the same
and
thing.
The Chinese officials on numerous occasions have said this formally and informally to their Indian counterparts, is they view the boundary dispute, they want to put that aside for the time being and focus on all the other aspects of this relationship. The Indian view is you cannot unilaterally change the status quo and then think that it's business as usual. As the External Affairs Minister said a few days ago in Parliament, it is not business as usual. This is not a normal bilateral relationship. And until this boundary question is settled, or at least the attempt to change the status quo that China made in 2020, that is fully addressed, and you go back to the situation of status quo ante as it existed pre-April 2020, you're not going to have a normal bilateral relationship. And no amount of trade, no amount of billions and billions of dollars of trade is going to help bring this into a normal bilateral relationship. I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests. We'll see how this story plays out. Like I said, for now, it appears to be a localized clash. There have been injuries, minor injuries to both Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers. 6 Indian soldiers is the number that we have. There seems to be an indication, a steer from government sources, that far more or a far higher number of Chinese soldiers were injured. One silver lining, as I said, there doesn't seem to be any major injuries or any fatalities, leading us to believe that no lethal weapons were used. We'll take a break. That was the news until now. But as we take a break, let's now hear a big news that's coming in for car owners.
कार्यकर्ता की उपेक्षा नेता की उपेक्षा होती है और नेता जब कार्यकर्ता की उपेक्षा होती है तो
Now I'm crossing over to News 18's Manoj Sharma to get us more. Manoj, ये मंत्री ऐसे क्यों कहा?
Yeah, in fact, he was addressing his party workers there in Patna district of Madhya Pradesh. In fact, last night he was talking to party workers, and he was saying that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he was referring how he's going to put an end to elections in this country, how he's going, he was simply, his allegation was that Prime Minister is in fact dividing the nation on the basis of caste, creed, language. All these things, these were the vile allegations by the former Minister of Madhya Pradesh. Raja Pateria was the minister in the Vijay cabinet. In fact, he is also saying that, referring to, very objectionable language was used by Raja Pateria, and that is why BJP has reacted very sharply. And we are right now with Madhya Pradesh Home Minister, he is also reacting on this matter. And in fact, the BJP government in Madhya Pradesh, they can go even to the extent of filing an FIR against Raja Pateria for his objectionable comment.
Absolutely. Now, Manoj, this is not the first time that the Congress member has really made statements against the Prime Minister when it comes to something of this shocking nature. Can you take us through what's happened in the past with the Congress and their statements as well?
Yeah, in fact, if you look at, you must remember that statement by Mani Shankar. In fact, now BJP leaders here in Madhya Pradesh, they are saying that all the time these party members of opposition, in fact, particularly from the Congress, they keep on targeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That's okay. They can target Prime Minister on the issues. In fact, there must be some issues on which they should target Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But how can they use such a foul language against anyone, particularly against the Prime Minister? He's a Prime Minister of the country. He's not Prime Minister of the BJP or the Congress or the Aam Aadmi Party. He's Prime Minister of this country, and how can they use such a foul language against Prime Minister? And that is why Madhya Pradesh government and can even go to the extent, as I was referring to you, that they will file some case against Raja Pateria on this matter.
Absolutely. Now, this, as you mentioned, is a big shocker because you cannot openly threaten the Prime Minister of a country like this. Can you tell us more about how the BJP has responded to this? Because you were saying that the Home Minister has, the MP Home Minister has.
Yeah, in fact, BJP leaders are saying that this language, what he is saying, that he was saying that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to put an end to election. Then he said Prime Minister Narendra Modi is dividing the nation on the basis of religion, caste and language. And then he is saying that there is a threat because of the Prime Minister to tribals and minorities. And then he keep on saying, objectionable language which we cannot even use against the Prime Minister. And that is why BJP is reacting very sharply on this matter. And in fact, we are just waiting what the Madhya Pradesh government is going to do, and we are waiting from Home Minister at his residence and waiting for his response.
Yeah, of course. Now, Manoj, one thing this does put the spotlight on is the Congress, because essentially this is not the first Mantri that has said something like this. And what we really need to... All right, change of plans. I want to cross over to Manak Agarwal from the Congress, who's joining us on the line right now. Mr. Agarwal, thank you for speaking to CNN News 18. We want to discuss the statement that's been made by a member of the party of yours, where he's basically calling for the killing of the Prime Minister. How do you justify this?
देखिए, पटेरिया जी का ये उद्देश्य नहीं था। पटेरिया जी के मुंह से निकल गया, उन्होंने इसके लिए माफी भी मांग ली और किसी भी कांग्रेस पार्टी के किसी भी पदाधिकारी का या नेता का इस तरीके का उद्देश्य कभी नहीं हो सकता। उन्होंने तत्काल इस चीज का खंडन किया और माफी मांग ली।
पर मुंह से कैसे निकाल सकते हैं ऐसी स्टेटमेंट?
वो निकल गया, उनको गुस्से में रहे थे उस समय, भाषण देते समय गुस्से में निकल गया उनका, और इसके बाद उन्होंने तत्काल माफी मांग ली।
All right, Mr. Agarwal, I want you to stay on the line with us because we're also being joined by BJP's RP Singh. Mr. Singh, thank you for speaking to CNN News 18. We have this massive breaking development where Congress Neta has essentially called for the killing of the Prime Minister. We have just spoken to Mr. Manak Agarwal, who's saying that it accidentally came out of his mouth and he has asked for forgiveness. But how do you see this?
Well, it's not the first time it's happening. Earlier also, the leaders from UP has that will cut the Prime Minister into pieces. So this is an ongoing stated mindset of the Congress party, which keep reflecting by various leaders. Various leaders keep talking on this line, and then this can't happen without some basic consent or some basic line being drawn by the higher up. Because how can a leader say that I'll kill the leader, or let's kill the leader, or let's kill the Prime Minister of the country? So this is clear that it's somewhere in the mind, because they can't defeat BJP or the Prime Minister Modi electorally or democratically. So that's why they're indicating that let's kill him. And earlier I remember Mr. Manish Shankar Iyer has gone to Pakistan and has yielded to Pakistan to help remove Prime Minister Modi. So they can go to any extent because they don't believe in democracy or democratic institutions.
Absolutely. Now, how is your party prepared to deal with this statement? Are you
Welcome back. Raja Pateria, senior Congress leader from Madhya Pradesh, has sparked a massive controversy. In a now viral video, Pateria can be seen and heard asking his people to kill Modi to protect the constitution. Pateria defended himself by saying that he only meant kill Modi politically, but his clarification has hardly helped as the BJP has accused the Congress of being repeat offenders. Will the Congress crack the whip and take action against him, or will it continue to not learn its lessons that personal attacks on Mr. Modi never work?
मोदी धर्म जाति भाषा के आधार पर बांट देगा, मोदी की हत्या करने के लिए तत्पर हो।
Raja Pateria, a senior Congress leader from Madhya Pradesh, has triggered a massive controversy. In a viral video, Pateria is seen asking people to kill Prime Minister Modi to protect the constitution.
कि मोदी इलेक्शन खत्म कर देगा, मोदी धर्म जाति भाषा के आधार पर बांट देगा, संविधान यदि बचाना है तो मोदी की हत्या करने के लिए तत्पर रहो, हत्या इंदसाई कराने का काम।
कल मंडलम सेक्टर के
After facing huge backlash, Pateria defended himself, saying that his remarks were misrepresented.
मैं गांधी को मानने वाला आदमी हूं, गांधी की मानने वाला आदमी हत्या की बात नहीं कर सकता। वो वीडियो गलत तरीके से पेश किया गया है।
But Pateria's clarification hardly helped. Hours after the video surfaced, Madhya Pradesh Home Minister Narottam Mishra ordered an FIR to be filed against the Congress leader.
कुछ ऐसे कथन उसमें दिए गए हैं जो कि निश्चित रूप से डेरोगेटरी रिमार्क की श्रेणी में आते हैं और धमकी की श्रेणी में आते हैं, तो FIR में सभी सेक्शंस का समावेश किया गया है।
विकास को नए स्तर पर परिभाषित। The BJP came down heavily on the Congress party.
प्रश्न ये उठता है कि गांधी खानदान ने क्या मोदी का मर्डर सैंक्शन किया है?
Congress MP Rahul Gandhi is currently in the middle of his Bharat Jodo Yatra and talking of peace. But his own party leaders are openly inciting violence against the Prime Minister. So will Congress walk the talk and take action against its errant leader Raja Pateria?
Why is the Congress not taking action against this errant leader? Sanju Verma, BJP national spokesperson, joining us. Gautam Seth is spokesperson of the Congress party. Professor Nalin Mehta is group consulting editor with Network 18 and author of the new book, The New BJP, and George Kurian, political strategist, joining us as well. Sanju Verma, I don't know if you heard Mr. Pateria. He's saying that His statements have been misconstrued. He says Modi ki hatya matlab Modi ko chunav mein harana, not physically Modi ki hatya.
You know, Zaka, I think Raja Pataria's statement that I never meant to kill him, I was insinuating that, you know, he needs to be electorally defeated, seems to be an afterthought, and his excuse seems to be a very poorly worded, lame excuse. And I just have this to say, that, you know, the Congress increasingly, if you look at Mallikarjun Kharge, barely a couple of weeks back, he said, you know, Prime Minister is a 10-headed Ravan. You had Udit Raj who mocked at the, President of India, Draupadi Murmu. Is it only because, she was vehemently and unequivocally, elected and supported by BJP MPs and legislators? Perhaps that is the case. You look at Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, who's been the leader of opposition for the Congress. He calls the president Rashtra Patni. Then you look at, Sandeep Dixit. A couple of years back, he called the late Bipin Rawat Sarakka Gunda.
Okay.
You have Shashi Tharoor and, Sushil Kumar Shinde calling Hindus as Talibanis. The larger point I'm trying to make is that reckless statements by senior Congress top brass seems to be not the exception but the norm. And I think when Raja Pataria says that the BJP and Modi need to be removed because they are against the constitution, I need to remind the Congress and to this gentleman, though he certainly doesn't deserve to be called a gentleman to start with, that, forget the 1975 emergency. Between 1950 when the constitution came into effect and 2021, there have been 105 modifications in the Congress, out of which more than 65 modifications have been done by the erstwhile Congress regimes.
All right.
So we don't need an integrity certificate from the Congress.
Let me ask
on how
Gautam
democratic we
Seth
are.
of the Congress party. Gautam Seth, the fact of the matter is, from Maut Ka Saudagar to the Chaiwala bribe in 2014 to the Neech jibe in 2019, and most recently your new president, Mr. Kharge, calling Mr. Modi Ravan or comparing him to Ravan. Fact is, Congress doesn't seem to have learnt its lesson that any kind of personal attack on Mr. Modi always politically backfires on you.
Zaka, before coming on the debate, firstly praying for the quick recovery of our soldiers who have, fought for us today so fearlessly. Now, coming to the debate, to begin with, in the strongest of words, the Indian National Congress condemns the shameful statement made by Mr. Raja Pataria. The nation's Prime Minister is as much as my Prime Minister, as much as of a Bharatiya Janata Party member. So please don't teach the Congress party lessons on non-violence as inclusivity, because the Congress has always stood to represent these values enshrined in India's constitution. But I would also like to ask Ms. Sanju Verma, from what she says, does she mean that when Sadhvi Pragya openly calls the murderer of the father of the nation as a ghost dog, it represents the Bharatiya Janata Party's ideology?
The debate is not
please
on
let
Sadhvi
me complete. I
Pragya.
didn't speak when you were speaking.
No, you can't digress.
Ma'am, let him make his point. You can always rebut. Let him make his point. You can always rebut. Let him finish. Go
Says
first, please.
Maryada todoge to Sita Haran hoga. Did that represent what the BJP stands for?
Now
When
may I
Giriraj
rebut?
Singh comments on the skin color of Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, was that sanctioned by the Prime Minister of India? I'm not trying to say that हमने ये बोला, आपने ये बोला, हम दोनों गलत तो बात को भूल जाएं. No. All I'm trying to say is that such
One second, let him finish.
processes,
One
that
second,
such
ma'am. You
thought
also took
processes-
2-3 minutes in your first answer. Let him finish.
that such thought processes represent an individual's way of thinking. We must condemn it, denounce it in the strongest ways possible.
Okay.
And also,
No,
let the
denouncing
legal
is one thing,
framework
Gautam
take its
said.
action.
Why your party is
Let the
not
legal
taking any
framework take
action,
its
you've not
action.
answered that question. But anyway, Sanju Verma, respond, and then I'll go to the other two guests after that. Yeah.
Zaka, talking about Giriraj Singh's comments, and I can then remind you that you contested the 2017 assembly elections in Uttar Pradesh with Samajwadi Party, and their top leaders were commenting on the color of Jayaprada's innerwear. So please don't get into that territory. Let's be very clear. What did Raja Pataria say? He said that the BJP is anti-constitution. Do we know the emergency of 1975? Who imposed it? Indira Gandhi. Who brought in the first amendment curbing free speech? Jawaharlal Nehru. who tried to bring in the Anti-Defamation Bill in 1988. Thank God it was thwarted. Rajiv Gandhi, who defied the Supreme Court and denied Shah Bano a measly alimony of 179 rupees per month. It was Rajiv Gandhi. You know, so Congress has a history of throwing the rule book at the constitution makers, at the highest echelons of the judiciary.
I'm sorry, the nation knows who is getting the political discourse of the
Okay.
nation.
All right. I'm going to pull back from both the political spokespersons for a second. Let me go to Nalin Mehta. Let me go to Nalin Mehta. Nalin Mehta, the point is that there is a political cost to such personal attacks. Whenever Mr. Modi is at the receiving end of a personal attack, whether it's the Ravan comment or the Maut Ka Saudagar comment or Chaiwala comment, he has this uncanny ability to turn that around into a politically advantageous sort of terrain for him. How does he A, manage to do that, and B, what about what Gautam Seth is asking? You know, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi was also referred to in very disparaging terms in the past. How come that is kosher?
Right. So I think, firstly, I think it's very good of the Congress spokesperson to condemn the statement and to denounce it unequivocally. I think what would be good is also for the Congress leader in question, who's made the objectionable statement, to apologize unconditionally. I think if outside of this particular incident, you're absolutely right. Every time the Congress or somebody from the Congress says these things like Ravan and so on for Modi, it ends up strengthening brand Modi. And the Prime Minister actually referred to this specifically in his victory speech after the Gujarat election at the BJP headquarters. Part of it, I think, is that it is a deeply held belief in core sections of the Congress and sections of the liberal elite and intelligentsia and the woke sections of society, if you like, that Narendra Modi is bad for democracy, that this is going to lead India down a very bad path, and so on and so forth. That is not a view that's held by large sections of the electorate and voters in this country. And I think this inability to realize this and constantly fighting on the terrain that the Prime Minister always ends up winning is a tactical and strategic mistake by the Congress. It keeps coming up as a Freudian slip on and off, and sometimes it's very deliberate, like in the way in the manner in which Mallikarjun Kharge had said it during the campaign. So I think this is a lesson the Congress is not yet learned.
Okay, George Kurian, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I asked Gautam Seth this. Yes, you've condemned what Mr. Pateria has said, but surely you can take action. Proof of the pudding is in the eating. The Congress party will be judged by its actions, not so much by its words. George Kurian.
Well, I agree to you, Zaka. Having said that, the Congress party has gone ahead and condemned this incident in the harshest of words, and I strongly believe, I also do not endorse these statements made by this Congress leader, which brings no relevance to the Congress ideology in particular. Congress doesn't believe in making such statements of enmity or revenge, for that matter. Having said, whatever statement he has made, he has come on record to say that and clarified that he didn't mean it. But having said that, in the first place, he shouldn't have used such words for the Prime Minister, who is the Prime Minister for the entire nation, irrespective of any party. I agree to the opening remarks made by Gautam here that the Congress party has denounced this statement made by him, and I'm sure that the Congress party needs to lead by example and take some collective action, or some kind of there is the committee that which looks into things like that. So I believe that Congress party will look into this matter.
Gautam Seth, the irony is that Rahul Gandhi is in the Bharat Jodo right now, and he's going everywhere saying about peace and love. He says, मेरे दिल में मोदी के लिए नफरत नहीं है, RSS के लिए नफरत नहीं है, लेकिन मैं उनके खिलाफ लड़ूंगा. And in the middle of that, this is a hate-filled statement by one of your leaders, a former minister, by the way.
Well, Zaka, the nation has always been known, our nation has always been known for politics of progress, inclusivity, from the era of Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru ji, to Rajiv ji, and even Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. This name-calling and personal attacking was never a part of the political discourse of this nation. And today, sadly, be it BJP leaders like Mr. Kailash Vijayvargiya, Sadhvi Pragya, or anyone else, or be it Mr. Raja Pateria, who spoke today, we unequivocally condemn such statements, denounce such statements. And what I personally and as a Congress representative am against is the self-oriented, selective politicization of such issues, of such statements, which lead to kind of derailing the conversation in the nation. That should have happened on social issues.
Okay.
That should have happened on economic equality, or on, the ongoing inflation.
Of course, all of these issues were raised by the Congress party, both in Gujarat and in Himachal. In Gujarat, it did not work. In Himachal, it worked. But Sanju Verma, I keep coming back to this point that the Congress keeps asking again and again, that BJP leaders have also said pretty disparaging things about Sonia Gandhi, about Priyanka Gandhi. Rahul Gandhi has been called in disparaging terms for a number of years now. So how come that is acceptable, but anything said about Mr. Modi is not?
Zaka, let's be very clear. Let's not draw a false equivalence. Disparaging remarks have been made by XYZ from each side. But to say that I will kill the Prime Minister of India and you want to equate with just about any reckless remark, I think that is, not acceptable. Let's understand very clearly.
We have condemned it.
Can I please finish?
Gautam, please allow Sanjay Verma to make a point. Gautam, please. Gautam, please yield. Gautam, please yield. Gautam, please yield. Please relent. Please relent. Sanju, make your point, please. And no personal attacks. Thank you. Yeah.
Zaka, let's be very clear about one thing. You can't equate the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy, Narendra Modi, with Sonia Gandhi or Rahul Gandhi or Mallikarjun Kharge or XYZ. Get that very clear. And this is not the first time. Do you remember Imran Masood, who said, "Main Narendra Modi ki boti kaat dunga"? He was then promoted to the position of Vice President of Indian National Congress and given a ticket to contest from Muzaffarabad in Saharanpur. It is a different matter that he later joined the Samajwadi Party, earlier this year. So my point is, does the BJP need endorsement of how inclusive it is from the Congress? No. I will end in 20 seconds by telling you just one thing, Zaka. Today in Narendra Modi's cabinet, there are 29 OBCs, 12 ministers who are Dalits, and 8 ministers who belong to the Adivasi or scheduled tribe community. We have the highest number of members in the cabinet today who are from marginalized sections of the society, including 11 women cabinet ministers. This is the most inclusive cabinet ever in India's post-independent history. So please ask Mr. Gautam Seth to keep his certificates of how inclusive or otherwise we are to himself. We don't need your certificates or endorsements.
Gautam Seth and then Nalin Mehta, final word. Gautam Seth.
I don't understand. When you yourself want to bring the political discourse of the nation to discuss such petty issues, to discuss such petty mindset, rather than making sure that the country talks about issues that matter. You don't want us to talk about inflation. You don't want us to talk about unemployment. You don't want us to talk about women empowerment. You don't want us to talk about social security. But yes, one such statement comes in and you want the entire nation to talk about it. Do debates, come to Twitter, go to social media. I'm so sorry. It is you people who are denouncing the political culture of this nation.
All right, I'll give the final word.
It is you people who are making sure that the political culture of the nation falls down.
It comes back to, there is a feeling that sections of the Congress party have still not come to terms with the fact that the son of a chaiwala is Prime Minister. You can call it elitism, you can call it, social discrimination or whatever. But the fact is that sort of feeling driving people like Mr. Pateria to make the statement that he made? Or is it the fact that the Congress is simply not able to taste electoral success against this election winning machine that the Modi juggernaut has become?
So I think first and foremost, I think the comments in question were very intemperate. They were very unfortunate, and they should not have been uttered. They have been withdrawn. I think there should be an unequivocal apology. The Congress spokesperson has apologized. I think they do reflect a feeling in large sections of the Congress, including at the highest levels of the party as well, about this sense that somehow the BJP's ascendance is somehow illegitimate, that somehow despite it coming in through electoral victories, that somehow there is something deeply wrong with this. I think this to my mind, that's where it comes from. I think it's unfortunate. We should not have these kind of debates because they are completely disrespectful to the voter.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much to Nalin Mehta, George Kurian, Gautam Seth and Sanju Verma for joining us. We'll see if the Congress learns its lessons about how personal attacks in the past certainly seem to have hurt it whenever it attacks Mr. Modi personally. Raja Pateria has apologized for his comment, but no action has been taken against him. Not yet. That's a wrap. Maria Shakil joining you with News Episode.
Watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. For the first time since Galwan, India and China, in fact, their troops briefly clashed at the line of actual control in Arunachal Pradesh on December 9. The army says the face-off led to minor injuries to a few personnel from both sides. The two sides immediately disengaged from the area. Sources have told PTI that at least 6 Indian soldiers were injured in the clash and brought to Guwahati for treatment. Sources have told ANI that Indian troops gave a befitting response to Chinese troops. Sources say the number of Chinese soldiers injured is more. The Chinese had come heavily prepared with around 300 soldiers, but did not expect the Indian side also to be well prepared. The opposition plans to raise the issue in Parliament tomorrow. The Congress wants the Prime Minister to make a statement in both houses of Parliament. Government sources say they are armed with facts and are ready for a discussion. A call will be taken whether the Defence Minister, that is Raksha Mantri, will make a statement in Parliament at all tomorrow or not. Akash is joining us live. He tracks Defence Ministry for us. We also have Abhishek Jha. He tracks External Affairs Ministry for us. Akash, the incident happened on 9th. What do we know about the provocation? What was the provocation?
Right. So, Maria, as you rightly mentioned, this incident happened on 9th of December. And, as far as this area is concerned, so, Maria, we have been given to understand that this is not an all-weather approach area. And that is the reason why both the sides look for dominance. And, Indian side and both the Chinese side were basically, involved in this clash. But we are learning that Chinese sides, had more numbers, and even then they have suffered, injuries. And, as far as Indian side is concerned, so 6 of our Jawans are injured in this particular thing. And also we are learning that on the other side, we have more than 10 in number. Talking about this area, Maria, so this is the eastern sector of the actual line of control, and this is the second most sensitive, sector. Talking about Galwan, so we know that what happened in 2020 when 20 of our Jawans, laid down their lives. And, after that, we know the kind of approach that Indian Army and, in fact, the Defence Ministry has, taken. And also talking about the habitat, so we know that more than 25,000 habitat have been created in the eastern Ladakh area. But